Hi everyone, welcome to Tech Talks. Our security edition today is focused on automating across a zero trust architecture with Splunk SOAR. Tech Talks is a series of short webinars that are deep dives for technical practitioners. Our goal is to help you, our valued customer, as you continue in your Splunk journey. Our experts help create these best practices and we want you to leverage them in your daily role. Take it away, Kelby.
My name is Kelby Shelton. I'm a senior solutions engineer here at Splunk. We have a jam-packed presentation for you, so let's get into it. So we're going to talk about zero trust today, and we'll start with a refresher on zero trust for all those here who might be unfamiliar with the concept, or even if you're experienced, you might benefit from that as well. Then we'll talk specifically about how automation can be applied to zero trust, and then we'll transition into a live demo. So what is driving this buzz around zero trust? You may have heard about it recently or in the past few years. Part of it is if you're in the public sector, you're being told to adopt zero trust more and more. There's an executive order around it. But even if you're in the private sector, we are transforming the way we secure our network. At the end of the day, protecting your network is essential, but the formation of our networks are changing. Think about the pandemic caused explosion in remote work. Our internal employees are no longer internal to a physical location. Nation state-backed activity and recent high-profile attacks. We have to worry about that. We have to worry about supply chain related software attacks against vendors and their package management. And then, of course, businesses are transforming the way they connect. It's already been mentioned throughout today's webinar that folks are transforming to microservices and cloud. And along with that, their data and their apps have to be accessible from everywhere, which it's more convenient, but it also poses a lot of problems. So that old school, you may have heard of called M&M model of a hard exterior and a soft inside, that just falls apart with modern information systems. But of course, there is good news and there is guidance around how we can move to a zero trust mindset to get over these, to address these problems. So let's talk about zero trust. What is it and how to use it? So I'm going to start off with a little bit of an analogy here. I used to work at a hospital in the Kansas City area. And, we even though I was in incident response, we got a lot of yearly training on, general hospital security. And one of the items we received training on was holding the door open for people. And, common courtesy is to hold the door open for someone. But if you're in a sensitive area of the hospital, if you do that, you just bypass the security controls of your organization. So similarly, in modern network architecture, just because a user or device was allowed onto the corporate network doesn't mean they should have now all the access they want to our proprietary, intellectual property, source code, or even systems like a domain controller. The list could go on and on. In that illustration I gave, physical security works because a badge can be matched with the person and it says what area they're authorized in. But in order for all that to work, both people and the areas of the hospital are categorized based on their function. So it's a relative security and it's a maturing process to get there. It didn't happen overnight. So on your screen, you should see a NIST quote, and you're probably thinking you're going to see a lot more NIST coming up, and you'd be right. So let's talk about some of the great guidance from NIST and CISA and how it can be applied to automation. So on your screen here are the 5 pillars of zero trust defined by the CISA security model. This is just one way to think about adopting zero trust. It carves it up into identity, devices, network, applications, and data. And along the bottom there, you'll notice along those steps there's three major foundational elements: visibility and analytics, automation, and governance. So these three bullet points are some of the guidance around automation and orchestration across those 5 pillars in that CISA document. And really the key highlights are performing dynamic group membership, automatically applying access control rather than waiting for someone to approve it, and following CI/CD deployment models. And let me touch a little bit upon automation as it relates to traditional response plans. If you think about a lot of organizations' response plans, they often start out with doing things like resetting a user's password, disabling an account, or quarantining a device, or similar actions as those. Now, nothing wrong with those. Again, this is a maturing process. As we get more microservices and more cloud, those things like disabling an account can be incredibly disruptive. Some might even describe them as resume generating events, because if you reset the wrong password, you're going to anger a lot of people. So to reach this kind of zero trust mindset and world, we have to think differently about automation. We need to invoke more granular actions. We want to reduce the access, not disable an account. We also need to trust our security tools. There's an element of allowing the automation to be trusted and to perform these actions. And of course, having the ability to roll that back on a moment's notice in case mistakes were made. And having an automation strategy at a business level that allows you to do these things, as well as continuously improving that automation and developing more playbooks, more response strategies. So in our upcoming demo, we're going to showcase how Splunk SOAR invokes these smaller actions or bigger actions. We're going to show both, and a process flow that is modular and can be continuously built upon. So let's put all this together and showcase what this looks like from a example kind of attacker scenario, and then we'll dive into the actual Splunk SOAR product and how it does all of these components. So in our example, we're going to be looking at a user visiting an unknown suspect URL, something we see a lot every day. They download, in this case, a malicious macro embedded Excel file. So in a lot of situations, even though, as in this example, automated enrichment occurs via Splunk SOAR, that doesn't guarantee that that threat intelligence gathering is going to render an accurate verdict on that malicious file for a variety of reasons. The hash could have changed, the sandboxing that occurred could have led to inconclusive results. It could have evasion techniques. A lot of reasons why a tool like Splunk SOAR might not have enough confidence to act upon that original suspicious file detection. So a little bit of time passes. The user invokes that file. And of course, that file begins to do a lot of suspect things, sets up persistence, begins to enumerating some data on the system. And that's when the analytics from Splunk Enterprise Security aggregates all of these things together and then immediately kicks off a risk incident rule, because our risk has risen to an unacceptable level and containment needs to occur right away. So it's sent to SOAR for containment. SOAR does some additional checks to make sure that this is okay, and then proceeds it to containment. And we point out Okta and Zscaler here because in this case, we're going to do some granular action containment on those tool sets. But of course, we have a variety of integrations available. But ultimately, at the end of your slide, that lateral movement or data exfiltration never happens because it's not given enough time to begin doing those steps before Splunk SOAR steps in, reduces the access, and allows, frees up the analyst time to investigate the situation, figure out how to roll everything back and delete that malware and get that user their access that they would normally have. So with that, let's go ahead and demonstrate Splunk SOAR in action and how all of this works together. We begin our investigation looking at an alert for bstol at froth.ly. If we look at our workbook, you'll see that we are in the investigate phase and we have some notes left here. We have an auto-generated notable event summary, which shows a timeline of events from first to last. And reviewing these events, you'll see they align closely to our scenario that we mentioned in the slides previously. At the bottom, you'll see an excel.exe was launched. In fact, let's zoom in on that. You can see that excel.exe was launched PowerShell, and then a suspicious registry entry right after. Of course, all of our alerts were automatically aligned to MITRE tactics and techniques for the analyst to review. So let's go ahead and show off how automation can be used to contain this alert. Now, we purposely paused this alert previously, but we're going to go ahead and proceed to our containment. We'll select our response option, Auto-Containment, and hit complete. Now, as this runs, keep in mind that this is something that could have happened already had we not paused it. This could have already occurred and been contained when we clicked into the event. So we can see Zscaler and Okta doing their job, adding the user to a quarantine type group, and then a new note was left for us. So let's return to our workbook. We can see that workbook has evolved with a new phase. That new phase is called mitigate, and our render verdict is complete. We'll see that mitigate also has protect assets and users completed with a new note. That note is a containment summary of everything that has occurred up until this point. And if we zoom in on this, you'll see that it includes all of the actions on the activity pane, letting us know the sequence of events, and that this alert has been brought to a state that we can now proceed to remediate if we need to. And of course, if you need to check on action results in the evidence tab, you can see that everything has already been marked as important items that have occurred in this investigation. Returning back to activity, you'll notice that we have our action results in Okta user containment, and we can undo an action if we need to quickly revert any actions that SOAR has taken on our behalf. And of course, we can move that into a playbook so the user doesn't have to undo an action one by one, and instead they can undo all the actions. Now, you notice that we didn't actually have any host name or system containment occur. Now, we want to go ahead and rectify that and build out a new playbook that can be picked up into our existing content. So we'll go to our playbook screen, select new playbook, and type input. Now, the inputs can be whatever we want, whatever we want to call it, but the data type is important. So we'll select hostname, and that will make sure that SOAR assigns the right data type to the right playbook in this situation. Now, I want to showcase that we could go ahead and assign that host and do some dynamic group assignment like we discussed earlier in our presentation. But maybe we're just starting out and all we have available is just a flat quarantine. We haven't quite matured our system response. So we'll go ahead and select quarantine device in this simple example, and we'll pass in that input host name to that variable, or that the input to our action here, quarantine device, and you'll see that the data path is automatically added. And we'll go ahead and mark the evidence that comes out of this so that any actions that we take are automatically added to our evidence screen, and the analyst doesn't have to do any of that. So for the event we want to operate on, we'll go ahead and select the container that this is running against. We'll select the results from the containment action. And as far as the type of evidence, this of course is going to be an artifact ID. And if you ever need a refresher on what these things do, the help text under the info tab definitely will provide some guidance. So we'll drag that to the end, and we want to add a couple extra tagging elements so that our existing content will pick up that we've added this new playbook and go ahead and use it. So we'll add the tag contain an asset, go ahead and save it. We'll give some save comments here, letting us keep track of the state of this playbook. Okay, so let's return to our main home screen and check out our original event under our Sources tab. So we'll return to bstol at Frothy, and we'll go ahead and run that auto-containment once more. And we'll run it in a slightly different fashion from our main playbook screen. And we'll see if it picks up our new playbook. Now, of course, as this is running, keep in mind that we probably would test this playbook a couple times against some sample test data just to make sure that it works before throwing it and tagging it to be picked up in our production repo. So we got our user containment that occurred. Great. Now, is it going to pick up our asset containment playbook? Hey, sure enough, it picked up that we have a new CrowdStrike contain host. And of course, we have a host name in this event. So it went ahead and sent that off to our new playbook that we built. And of course, if we check our workbook, we have a new note left that represents this run of the auto containment. And we have a brand new asset containment report that lets us know that those actions were performed. So that showcases our auto containment along with our granular containment actions and how we can quickly develop new playbooks, new integrations, and have our Splunk SOAR system automatically pick those up and begin to use them whenever a event occurs that needs to have that containment.
Thanks, Kelby. So we're about ready to wrap up this tech talk, but before we do, I wanted to share some quick resources available to you to continue on your journey. Number one, you can explore all these integrations on splunkbase.com. Number two, you can explore sample playbooks on GitHub at phantomcyber/playbooks. And number three, reference documentation on all these risk notable playbook packs are available on docs.splunk.com. And don't forget that we have an incredible community of Splunk users on our community site. You can search the answer section on SOAR or security topics. You can also continue the conversation for this talk within the discussion section called Tech Talks at splunk.com/tech talk, where you will find all the additional resources you need. Finally, there's Splunk Ideas, where you can submit new product enhancements or vote for current ideas from other customers. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedules to join us today, and a special thanks to Kelby for taking us through this talk today. Please tune back in for future Tech Talks on security, as we are excited to share more topics with you in the future.